It's me, your host, Coach Pilar Arthur Sneed. Thanks so much for joining me here for another episode of The Last 10th. You know, I say it every single week, but I am super excited. You know, I'm going to say it. I'm super excited to have another guest with me here on the show. I have Vanessa Peralta-Mitchell, founder of two really great. One is an organization, and one is like, it's like something you can listen to and something you can watch on Instagram. So the first is VCPM Incorporated, which is a really great business concept, I think, of giving scholarships or grants to women of color to become coaches. Personally, I think that that's one of the most awesome things that I've heard in a really, really long time. And then the second is the LEAD, L-E-A-D. You'll have to help me with the second part of it, the coaching. It's like lead coach.
Yep, almost there. So the
Yeah.
Female Coach L.E.A.D.
That's it. The Female Coach L.E.A.D, with which Vanessa is chatting with women of color who are coaches from all around the world and chatting with them about their coaching expertise. Another thing that I think is very needed within this running space. So, Vanessa, I don't want to say too much more. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, oh, thank you, Pilar. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So the place that I always start is that I really love when guests talk a little bit about themselves. Just share with me and the audience a little bit about you, and you can share anything at all that you would like for us to know. It is a wide world.
Ooh, okay. So let's see where to start, right?
Yes.
I will definitely start a little bit in the beginning, but not dwell too much there.
Sure.
So I grew up in a big family, right? I'm the youngest of 6 kids.
Wow.
We grew up in New Jersey to 2 hardworking parents. They came here from Ecuador. My dad owned his own business, and my mom was kind of like pretty much like the backbone, the hidden hero, if you will,
Sure.
of that business. But she also had all of us to raise. So she was, I guess, what people would say is a stay-at-home mom. Although back then, really, that wasn't a label. Like that wasn't something that people called themselves or they called each other. But for me, growing up, I was a very shy girl in my youth.
Yes.
I mean, like the teachers would write comments. I remember to my parents, not about my grades or behavior, but the fact that I was so super shy.
Yes.
You think like teachers usually write comments about like, your kid's acting bad or something. No, my comments were like, she's a little too shy. You know what I mean? So looking back at those things, kind of funny now because I feel like I'm so vocal.
Yes.
But, I believe where I found my confidence was in sports. In fact, I remember like begging my parents to play sports. And that first sport was soccer. Like I literally had to beg them to play soccer because there was this idea of, oh, your legs are going to get too big, or it's not the thing for girls and stuff like that. Although at the same time, my dad would be playing with me, at the parks, treating me like just like one of the boys and stuff like that. But it's really, sports in general is where I got my voice, my confidence. And then eventually I played basketball. But I would say it wasn't really until I started running. And I didn't start that until after we had our first child. So kind of like my mid-20s. That's when I really found my voice and ultimately my purpose, right?
Yes.
So I went from like this casual runner to a certified run coach.
Yes.
Now, like you said, a business owner. And it's all because I conquered that thing, right? That thing that seemed so unimaginable to me at the time, right? And at the time, that unimaginable thing was to run 26.2 miles.
Yes.
Yeah, you know that feeling.
I do.
And that feeling of accomplishment just felt like addictive almost, like in a good way, right?
Yes.
Just that idea, if I can do that, right?
Yes.
What else can I do? What else is possible, right? Not only out on the pavement, but like in my life. So, and to bring it full circle, I'm leaving out like huge chunks, but
That's okay.
I would say, going from casual runner to certified run coach, it wasn't a very clear path.
Mm,
I did start to feel like people were coming to me for questions and looking to me as like the go-to person. And I was like, I better do something about this. I don't want to just, give people this advice. I want to come from like a very educational, knowing place. And I got certified. What I realized in that moment was something that echoed down the road, which is
mm,
I was one of few in the room.
mm.
So there was only two people of color visibly, right? I mean, because I can't
Sure,
assume, but
sure.
the other one was a male and me, and that was it.
Mm,
And looking back, that was such a microcosm, really, of every other space I had been in as a certified run coach. All of a sudden, I realized looking back, like, oh, when I first tried to go for that first marathon, the people of my run club, the ones in charge, were all white. And, every expert they brought in was also same gender, same race. I got my
mhm,
certification, same gender, same race. I
mhm.
started working for a company as a run coach, same gender, same race. I started working for an athletic brand for pop-up runs. Now there were females, but same gender. So, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it
Mhm,
definitely speaks to opportunity to expand that, right? And so, really, I kind of thought like there was like this little seed planted of like, wow, I wish there was more people of color, women of color coaches.
mm,
And that little seed really only grew during the pandemic.
mm.
Yeah, I started to venture out on my own right before the pandemic.
Sure.
I was putting together this event. It could be the all women's run panel, have 5 female experts, run experts, and then people could come and like get advice and tips and they can share their experiences. And I was gun ho about it being 5 women of color.
Yes.
Um, I wanted them to be certified run coaches, women of color, giving this, advice and stuff. And lo and behold, I couldn't find any. Like
Oh,
really, like
I
I
was
reached.
there. I was around.
Well, this was
We
when it
didn't
was.
know each other back then.
We didn't know each other. That, and it was before the pandemic, so this was like an in-person event.
Mm,
And so I'm like, I was looking kind of like in the tri-state area,
sure.
but I realized that wow, there really aren't many. There's people that people go to or people who they see as leaders, but as far as like a certification and
Mm,
who people see as like the experts,
mm,
there weren't any, if
mm,
any, very few, so that was like again another seed. And then fast forward, the pandemic happened, and really I was able to turn my in-person event to a virtual event.
mm,
And I did get 5 female experts, different backgrounds, but all of a sudden, it became clear to me what my purpose was, what my mission was, and what that was to increase the number of fellow women of color certified run coaches, because we are an untapped resource. I'm
mhm,
telling you, there are so many women runners, women of color runners, and I think a lot of it comes down to not knowing about the opportunity to
mhm,
be a certified run coach, or having the funds and access to it.
mhm.
And I'm one person, but I just felt like, you know, I can do something about that. I can wish for the change or I can
Yes,
propel it. And I chose to propel it forward. So,
that's right.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So there are so many. We talked like just before we started the show, we talked about that thread that I like to, I like to pull.
Yes. Yes.
And there are so many, there's so many there's so many there that I want to pull on without getting like too far away from the other ones. So where I want to go is I want to go back to something that you mentioned in the interactions with your dad and your family in starting out in sports, and that is that you said something like uh, there was a little bit of hesitance about you starting out in sports because they didn't want you to be like I call it the burly girl. They didn't want you to be the burly girl. And in my family, I had a lot of that same. I just talked about it on the last show where, before I got married, I was working out with my husband. We were going to the gym like 2 hours every day, working out, pumping iron. And I hated it. mostly because I hated being in. I looking back, I know that I hated it because I didn't like just being inside for 2 hours. I
Yep.
didn't enjoy that. And there was a certain point at which, like, I went home and my muscles were getting, I was getting bulked up, and I was looking good. I was looking fit. And my mom was just kind of like, ew, that's gross. Like, why would you want to look like that? And which is a whole nother, that's a whole nother issue. That's, between mom and daughter, whatever. But, but, but this can be a barrier to
Mm,
girls getting started
yes.
in physical fitness because of fear of not either not feeling feminine enough or not looking feminine enough. So
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, so I think the fear started not with my own, but with my parents' fear,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Their
mm.
fear of like, their, feminine daughter, maybe turning into this burly beast like you're talking
Sure.
about, right?
But
Uh,
like, and at the end of the day, there's nothing like, there's literally nothing wrong with that. But
Absolutely not.
yes.
Absolutely not.
Mm,
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think a lot of it too is, cultural as well,
mm,
right? Like,
mm,
for women or girls, the home is like your home base, right? Like
mm,
in the
mm,
Latino culture, they're
mm,
the things you pass on to your daughter are
mm.
like, how to take care of your family and how to cook and how to be a good mom and be a good wife. None of that speaks to sports,
That's
right?
right.
Or even exercise or self care,
That's
really.
right. Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because, fast forward and, when I was getting into running, my dad would always kind of ask me about running as if it was this thing, like kind of like, when are you going to be done with it? Like, kinda like, are you still doing that running thing? You know what I
That's right.
mean?
That's
Like there was
right.
like work, it was with my family. He would ask about my family. He asked about work, and then it'd be like,
Yes.
"Oh, are you still doing that?" Like
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And it wasn't really until the past couple of years that he has no longer asked me. I wish I can remember the exact words, but he
Mm,
no longer sees it that way, and I can tell by the conversations that he has with me
mm,
in terms of what I'm doing in the run
mm,
industry and the impact.
mm.
So it's funny that he saw this thing that they were almost trying to keep me away of in terms of sports and being active
Yes.
and exercising, and now coming full circle to that he appreciates and even says that he's proud of what I do.
That's awesome.
That's huge. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
awesome.
but I agree. There is this weird connotation, in terms of like, and maybe not so much today. I don't know, but back when
Maybe.
I was getting into the sports and stuff, it definitely was something that wasn't looked upon as like a need or something that you have to do.
Mm,
But it was something that I definitely wanted to do, and I knew in that space somehow I knew that it was a thread, like you said, like this thread of making me I was this shy girl, and it making me find my voice and my courage and my confidence,
mm.
whether it was out on a field or a court or now the pavement. That really transcended over to my everyday life of who I was, not as an athlete, but just as a human being.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I do think that even today, there are, I think it really is in our society. I think in American culture, there is a lot of gender based there's a lot of gender based uh, uh, cultural there are a lot of gender based cultural norms. Girls do this, boys do that, and I think that this translates into cultures all over the world, I think. And I do think that girls still face today barriers into getting into sports. I think there are barriers in getting into the sciences, barriers in getting into any of the more traditionally male, white male dominated, you know, things that girls can get involved in.
Yeah.
So I think that you're getting involved in running is a great way, whether you may see, whether you may see it happening or not, is a great way to be leading the way for young people to see, like, oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it too. It's totally okay. I can totally do this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And, it's funny because when you're going into these different spaces as a young girl or as a woman, we look to the experts, right? We look to
Mhm,
the experts for that knowledge
mhm.
and, to gain a better understanding and so they can share their experiences. But what happens when that expert is, someone that doesn't look like you or come from your community but you keep seeing the same type of expert again and again and again and again, and then all of a sudden you really feel that they're an expert, they're at a different level,
Mm,
and you feel like you almost don't fit in, so that you too can't be an expert, right?
that's
So
right.
all of a sudden there's this disconnect between me entering this space as a consumer, as a receiver, but
Yes,
not as the one that's leading, not as the
that's
one that's
right.
being seen as the expert. So yeah, I mean, this and a part of what we're doing with, I like to call them game changers, these women who are coming into the run industry, changing the game of who we see as the
Mm,
leaders and experts in the industry. I think that's super important for generations behind us, or even
absolutely.
other fellow women of color now who are in the running space and they're looking to the same experts, you know what I mean, as far as education and things like that. I think it's important that they also see the experts that are reflective of themselves, so that
Absolutely.
they, like you just said, so they too can feel like, hey, I can do that too.
Absolutely. So something else I want to go back to when you talked about getting more, you talked about getting more involved in running, and then people coming to you and starting to ask you questions about, like, should I do this? I felt very much the same way. That's why I got certified as a run coach, because I'm getting more involved in running, and people are asking me questions, and I had a sense of what I thought the right answer was, but I didn't really know if it was the right answer. So I thought, oh well, I should get, the RRCA came to my town, and that was in 2018 or something like this. It came to my town, and I was like, oh my goodness, they're doing this like right here in my town. And I was like, well, why not get this certification so I can just back up the knowledge that I think that I already have. And I would like to become more, I would like to just become more knowledgeable. So, what was it that motivated you to want to get your own certification?
Yeah, it was very similar. I was leading runs for Latinas in Motion,
Ah, okay.
and being in this community of supportive women, and someone, and actually even in my community of friends, there was no one there was no one when I first had this idea of running a marathon, which was so crazy at the time, because no one in my community, no one among my friends, definitely no one in my family ever
Mm.
ran just to run. Like, that wasn't
Me
you know
either.
that wasn't a thing. So I was really the first to do that in many circles,
Mhm.
whether it's family or friends, personal. And so I was like the person that ran the marathon and like knew about running, and so I would be getting asked anything from like shoes to like
Yes.
miles per week, or I have this pain. All of a sudden, I became like somewhat of a doctor. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
I did not give that type of advice. Oh, go with your first, listen, my certification
That's
ends in
right.
RRCA. There's no
That's
MD in there.
that's right. That's right.
But just the fact that people entrusted me enough, you know what I mean, to go to advice, I felt that it was almost my responsibility,
Mm,
to match that, and to say like, hey, I don't know all the answers, but
mm.
I'm willing to learn, and why not learn from the source, which to me meant the RRCA.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you also talked a little bit about when you got started in running. So you said you got started in running right after your first child was born in your 20s. I'm going to assume you're still 20.
Not at all. Not at all. My oldest is 15 years old. He's 16 soon.
But like, what was the catalyst for you to get started in running? Like, how did you find running at all?
Yeah. Oh, such a great question. So I remember to this day, I moved back home So, I went to school in Philly,
Mm.
and then I went back home to New Jersey, and I remember being in the living room watching this documentary. It was an HBO documentary. I believe it was called Dare to Compete, but it
Oh,
was about women in sports, and it
yes.
wasn't specifically about running. It was to cover like all these different types of sports, and it really honed in on the struggle that women had to compete at the same level. They really had to fight for equal rights within sports. It's something that really, like in terms of like running, wasn't really that long ago. It was like the 70s, you know?
Yes.
And so here I am watching like these stories of woman after woman like struggle just to have a fair chance at something that I was literally taking for granted. I didn't realize how, you could just sign up for a race now and
That's
go to
right.
the starting line. No one's trying to like kick you out and hunt you
That's
down.
right. That's
You
right.
know, um, so I was really moved by the documentary, and I felt compelled to honor the women who came before me. And of
Mm.
all the sports they covered, I felt like running was the most quote unquote realistic. Mind you,
Okay.
at that point, there was only one time I ever ran in my life besides sports, right? My friend asked me to go for a jog, and I looked at her like she was crazy. I'm like, who runs just to run? Like, and so we try to go around the block. Too. Let me tell you, I didn't even make it to the corner without like huffing and puffing. So even though I said like this was the most realistic sport, it really was far fetched for me.
Yes.
So that day, I had promised myself, and because those are the most important promises you can keep, right? Are the ones to yourself. I
Mhm.
promised myself that I was gonna run a marathon. And living in New Jersey, that marathon to me was New York City. So I
Mhm.
had my little like lifelong goal list because that's how long I thought it was gonna take me, lifelong to run a marathon. But I put New York City Marathon, and that day it became my goal. Mind you,
Wow.
it didn't happen overnight, and I actually ended up moving down here. We had our first child. So it was years later, and I gave myself permission to say that, that first goal is going to be the Philly Marathon because I live down here. But
Yes.
I will tell you, I did eventually check off that New York Marathon.
Eh,
Uh, thank you. But that's how I got started, was just that documentary that really literally moves me to action.
wow. 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 That's awesome. That's really awesome. I just think that, uh, the power of movies and the power
Storytelling.
of storytelling. Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly what I was gonna say, is the power of storytelling. People being able to share their stories, which is why I think that it's so important that you are on Instagram each month sharing the stories of coaches who are women of color. So talk
Mhm.
to me about that.
Yes. So every month on the 16th, that's to honor the 16 women that were fully funded to get their run coach certifications through my company. So on the
Mm.
16th of every month, we have what's called the Female Coach Lead. That's L.E.A.D, and that stands for leveraging, educating, amplifying diversity. And
Wow.
it's really a chance where we have one-on-one drop-in sessions with fellow women of color. Again, just to redefine who people see as the experts within the run industry. And
Mm.
so topics can cover anything from coach to athlete to business and community. And it really gives us just a chance to, I like to say, we highlight, spotlight, strobe light, any light you got.
I love that.
We put it on these women, because I think it's important to have a diverse pool of experts that you can choose from. I don't think anyone leaning all to one side or the other. I don't
Mhm.
think that's the right way to go. I think it should be equal, and I think it should be diverse. And this is our way of doing that. Again, not hoping for the change, but our doing our action in propelling that change forward. So it's the 16th.
Absolutely.
The 16th of this month actually is coming up on Sunday. So just a little plug.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And who's your guest for this week, this coming
Yeah.
week?
Oh, yeah. So this week we have Coach Morgan. It's
Ah,
on Sunday the 16th at 11 a.m. Eastern. And her specialty is ways that you can complement your running.
mm,
So if you check out her Instagram, which I definitely recommend, you
yes.
can just looking at her Instagram, you're like, I'm inspired to move right
Yeah,
now.
that's right, that's right.
But so the ways that she complements her running is she does running with her partner.
Mm.
And so that might sound simple. To some, it might actually, if you tried it and you realize, this is not working out.
That's right.
She gives you strategies so that you can have a successful time, running with your partner. And
Mm.
the other way she complements her running is with cross training. So she's
Ah,
going to let people know exactly what type of cross training is good for you as a runner, just overall to make you a stronger athlete. So she's going to
absolutely.
share some tidbits. Yeah. And what's
Absolutely.
really cool too is after the so if you can't make it live, I do post it on the IG, but we also make like these small infographics.
Mm.
So it's funny how like when people don't join live, 15 minutes all of a sudden seems like a long time, right? Right? I'm guilty of that too. But so each month, the coach shares specific tips or strategies. And so we make an infographic out of it. So you can just click through my infographics, get the tips, contact or at least follow the expert coach. And again, just, build this community in the sense of a go-to expert that you
Mm.
can reach out to.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I think it's a great idea. I watched the live chat that you had with Tess, Coach Tess, and that was just really great. I really just I think it's a great way for people to get exposure to a group of people that they may not have ever considered,
Mhm.
listening to or talking to or getting advice from. So I love the idea. So talk to me a little bit more about VCPM and how this concept came about of granting and funding female women, female coaches to get certified.
Yeah. So yeah, my company is VCPM Inc. And I like to say it's a business dedicated to using the power of the pavement to empower women to live a life without limits. And I'm
Mm,
going to give you a real quick backstory if I can. Um,
absolutely.
my mom actually played a major part in me starting my own business, which is ironic because it's my dad who actually, I grew up with him owning his own business. Um, but, my mom when we talk about courage, like my mom, and there's so many stories, especially of women of color that, epitomize courage. But my
Mm,
mom not only, came to this country, she didn't know the language, she didn't know a soul.
mm,
She raised six of us, and all those moments, that it does show signs of courage. But let me tell you, I have so many examples of my mom of courage that don't even speak to the moment I'm about to tell you. And so, there was this moment in time when my mom, and this wasn't that long ago, Pilar, this was like
mm.
a year ago.
Oh
Um,
wow.
my mom came to this realization of, she spent her whole life, like, helping my dad with his business and raising each of our kids. And at some point, we all grow up, we all grow up, we leave the house. And, my mom was having a tough time. And I only share this because she knows I share this,
Sure.
I don't want to put her business on blast. She has
Sure.
family.
She's aware of the
Yeah,
sharing of this
she
information.
knows.
Yes. Yes.
But she came to this point in her life where she was really at a realization point where she's like, you know what? I came to this country and I wanted to be an accountant. I wanted
Mhm,
to finish my studies. I wanted to have, this dream fulfilled, this goal fulfilled. And she kind of put that on the side to be a wife and a mother. And that's totally fine.
mm,
But in her moment of realization, she, I like to say, she passed me this baton of empowerment to
mm.
say, like, Vanessa, you don't have to wait to fulfill your goals. You
Wow.
can do them right now. And all the examples I have of my mom being courageous, that moment of vulnerability that she showed me, I mean, she was in tears, you know what I mean?
Mm,
To me, that was the most courageous thing I ever seen her do. To like
mm,
tell her youngest daughter,
mm,
like, hey, not there's no regrets there, but it was just a moment of like, you know what? Like I had all these dreams and stuff and I put them on the side, but you don't have to do that.
wow.
I just felt like, oh my goodness, like if that isn't the Lord speaking through my mom,
Wow, wow,
I
wow.
just felt like she was really kind of giving me this starting line, if you will, of like, hey, whatever it is, whatever change or impact or whatever it is that you're seeing that needs to be made, like you can
Mm,
do this and you can do it right now. And so that I took that, right? And coming from there, and let me tell you, so the ironic part of all this, I want to say really quick, is my dad owned his own business, and my mom was what we might label as a stay-at-home mom, although she helped my dad with his business and his books and stuff.
sure.
And I am totally living both of those lives right now. And in full transparency, I am literally living both my parents. Like I am taking care of my children, especially within this pandemic
Mm-hmm.
arena that we're in.
Sphere, yep.
Yeah, and I'm also, I own my own business. So it's so
Yes.
crazy to me. The two things that I really didn't ever want to aspire to do,
Yes.
I'm literally doing them both
Yes. Yes.
right now. But it was that moment when my in-person event was 2 weeks away and the pandemic happened, so everything got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I turned it to a virtual event, and I reached out. I had this mission of increasing the number of fellow women of color coaches. I reached out to my first um, funder. I had no business. I had no website. I didn't even have my event launched. All I had was a purpose, and I happened to email this woman who was a owner of this business because I was getting duplicate emails from them. So my email started off like, "Hey, I'm letting you know I'm getting like duplicate emails."
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I kept typing. And by the way, I'm having this all women's, run panel, and my mission is to increase the number of fellow women of color run coaches. And I really feel like this is in line with what you do. Before I knew it, I pressed send, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? What did I just do?
You
So
were like, your finger was like this.
yes, and like
And then you're like, I'm going to do it. And then you're like, crap. I
yeah,
hit send. I shouldn't have done that.
and when you hit that send, it's like that bomb sound, in your head.
Heart.
So that's what I did that one day, and she emailed me back. She emailed me back right away. It was like, I love what you're doing. Let's set up a call.
Wow.
And before you knew it, I was on the phone with her, and she's like, so how many women are you trying to fund? And I said, well, I really think that through my, because I worked out the numbers and stuff. Always good to do that, right? Before you get on the phone with somebody who's going to try to give you some money.
She wants to
So,
talk. I should probably write some things down.
right?
At least that's the way that I would be, because I probably wouldn't have written it down at the outset, but then I would be like, oh my goodness, I didn't expect her to answer, so I should probably do something about it now.
Hey, yes, you have to be prepared.
Yes.
And when she asked me that question, I was like, I'm trying to fully fund 5 women, at
Mm,
least 5 women.
mm.
She's like, okay, I'll match that. I'll help you fund another 5. And I was like, what? Like, this is, yeah. So 10 women off the break. And mind you, I didn't even have a website to direct her to. I didn't have any of that. I just was very committed and the need of what I was doing. It wasn't like this little thing that I thought might work. No, I'm fully gun ho, 100% going forward. This is something that needs to change. This is the way we're going to change it. And this is why you should be on board with what I'm doing?
Yes.
And so at some point, though, I will say there's 2 weeks and during the summertime where I gave myself a lot of grace as a wife and a mom because I probably didn't see anybody. I built my website, I started my business, and I launched my virtual all women's run panel in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And before I knew it, it was really that, having the mission and having the event really set and having my mom's empowerment really were all ingredients for me to start my own business legally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so before I knew it, I had about, aside from that first organization, I had 4 more people, 4 more organizations and businesses join in. And before I knew it, we were fully funding 16 women.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I will say too, what a key component of that was, so I do have a background in project management. And
Mm.
my first stop, I will say, give a shout out to the RRCA. Access is really big. And Pilar, you probably know this, like the run coach certification classes, they go up and they are gone like before anyone can even blink. And you're like, wait
Mm.
a minute, I thought that class in Ohio was there yesterday. Like, now it's gone.
I may have been fortunate in that the one that was in my area, I don't know if it's an upstate New York thing. I really don't know, but people did travel from like other states to come to this one in Saratoga. So I don't know if I got lucky or what
Yeah.
the deal is, but I just, I saw it and I just was like, "Yay, I'm gonna do it." Like and in all honesty, at the time when I saw it, I don't even know like where I saw the information. It was somewhat quite random, I guess, that I saw it.
Mm.
I don't know. So I maybe I just got lucky.
You did. You got very lucky. Mine, I had to go. My youngest was less than a year old, so I left
Mm.
enough pump milk for my husband. But I had to go on a plane and then take an Uber. My first Uber, I had to go all the way to New Hampshire.
It
Um,
was like the New York City Marathon. You had to take a plane, to take a ferry, to take a bus, to
right.
walk.
Seriously, I could have probably ran half of that, knowing all that now. But no, yes, I had to do all that just to go there. And so, I mean,
Wow.
access in general is a big
Yes.
thing. In addition to the funding, so reaching out to the RRCA, I told them about my mission, and I was like, "Hey, can you guys hold some spots for me?" And
Mhm.
they're like, "Sure." So they created this online course that was specific to the people I was bringing in,
Mhm.
and then they eventually opened it up. Other because the class holds more than 16 people, but I
Absolutely.
will definitely give them a shout out because there was real intention there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
To increase the number of not only certified run coaches, but specifically women of color run coaches.
Yes.
And they're doing it again this time around. I'm looking to fund another 16 women this fall. So yay! Yeah,
That's
right.
awesome.
So yeah, that was definitely my first stop. And once I had them on board, I mean, I literally, pun intended, hit the ground running.
That's so awesome. So awesome. There are a couple of things about your sharing of this story. So first, when you're talking about your mom, and what she shared with you, I had goosebumps in that she's basically sharing with you, uh, she was sharing with you her heart, really, and sharing with you like all of her hope that she had when she came to this country, and everything that she had hoped and dreamed would be her dream, and saying and pouring it, literally pouring it into you. And
Mhm.
I mean, I like, that just gives me goosebumps that she could give that to you, and say to you, daughter, are you are my hope, and you are that thing that you're gonna do all this stuff that I said, okay, I'll just put it over here, but now I can see it in you. That's
Aw,
wonderful.
that's so sweet.
So wonderful. So beautiful, and such a wonderful mother and daughter connection. Just gives me total like goosebumps. And then the second thing is something that I feel like I've been in business for myself for, in some way or another for like 20 something, almost 20, 30 years. I've done a bunch of different things, a bunch of different businesses. And I think the way that you went about it in getting yourself started, because a lot of times in starting something new, we tend to overthink, right? So like you can think, I need a business plan. I've got to write down all the things, and it's got to be like this, and it's got to be right like this, thinking that it has to be perfect before you can get started.
Mhm.
And the reality is that you have to get started before you'll ever, and you probably won't ever see perfection. Just get moving. And so by saying what you said to that person in the email and sharing with passion and drive, look at where you are now.
Oh my goodness.
Changing the face of literally changing the face of running.
Mhm.
That is like that to me is like throw my fist up in the air, power to the people stuff.
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, and it's not easy. It's
Mm,
definitely, there's this sense of excitement in what I do and a sense of like fear almost.
mm,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Maybe fear is too strong of a word, but a synonym for fear
No,
because
if you say fear, I absolutely,
yeah,
I can be down with that. I get it.
yeah, because it's like no one's telling you where to go, how to get there, or what's next. You're
Mhm.
telling yourself that, and there's that excitement part, but then it's like there is that fear of like, well, wanting to get there by a certain time, or the proper tools, or you know what I mean? Like, what's the next step? Is this the next step? Is that, but you really, I find through it all, what something I used to see as a weakness that I see as a strength now is that vulnerability. So my mom
Mm,
showed that to me, right? And she's the strongest person I know, like, hands down. You know what I mean?
mm,
Even above any man I know. I mean,
that's
my
right.
dad is a close second, right? Because he's my dad. But my mom is the strongest person I know. But it was her vulnerability that really added this layer of strength that I had never really recognized in her
Mm.
before. And I love what you said about me and my mom, by the way. I can't wait to share this with her.
It's so
But
beautiful.
that layer of vulnerability, I think, it's what keeps it all together. Because me showing up every day, what I'm doing, it's not easy, and being vulnerable allows me to keep showing up, right?
Absolutely.
Because I'm being, as people say, their authentic selves, but it's also like an authentic purpose, and it's something that's not really mine.
Yes.
It's bigger. It's
Yes.
for the next generation, or the next woman, or the next community,
Mm.
the next industry, right? And I think that combined, like, that vulnerability is really that component that you can't replace. So, like, whatever you're doing, Pilar, for example, like, your vulnerability is your secret sauce to driving what you're doing. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And for me, the same. And each person has this exact same level
Sure.
of vulnerability. It's just that some people either try to deny it, or some people don't realize that it's really a secret superpower. And it
Absolutely.
took me really long time. It really wasn't until I came into this space of being a certified run coach and doing something with it, owning
Hmm.
my own company, and realizing that that level of vulnerability is really going to drive forward any mission or purpose that I have intended.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that when people talk about vulnerability, or at least the way that I've heard some people talk about it, is that the way that bamboo grows, right? Bamboo grows shallow roots, but it's one of the strongest, toughest plants that you can have in the world. You can build houses with it. It's not in the ground really really deep to where you can't just pull it out. I think you can just pull it out of the ground. But you know what I'm saying? But it's that vulnerability of the way that it grows. That is precisely the thing that makes bamboo a strong tree.
Mhm.
So I could not agree with you more that vulnerability is, along with running, is a secret superpower.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. But, running ourselves, we're vulnerable when we're out there running. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
we're intentionally putting ourselves in these, like, high struggle, high, challenge situations, and there's nobody out there. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
most of
right.
the time, right? There.
That's right.
I mean, let alone sometimes you're running solo, so sometimes no running buddy, but there's no ref, there's no rules.
That's
You-
right.
You're out there in your rawest form,
That's right.
especially if you're doing a loop. There's no out and back. You gotta get back somehow, and you have to push yourself. And that is at the cusp of vulnerability, really. Finding that inner strength and that inner grit. That is part of being vulnerable. So running definitely, is like the crossover, really, right? Of being vulnerable out on the pavement and digging into your inner grit and your inner strength and your inner determination, and the crossover how you can apply those things in your everyday life.
Absolutely. For me, running has been like this space of running, very much like yourself, has been like a personal awakening. eh, I never in a million years would have thought that I say this probably like once a month, every month. I never in a million years would have thought that I would be doing this right here. We're in this box. We're having this conversation. We're talking about running. We're talking about women of color being coaches. It's not something I could have imagined for myself. But the moment that I stepped foot across the first finish line was like this moment that this seed got planted, and everything in my like being just started to become alive. I started to, as you said, live to the purpose that I apparently was always there. I just hadn't found it yet. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's very apparent. And I think, like, in your case and in both of our cases, when you speak with such passion and you speak with such power about something, it can only be successful.
Hmm.
It can only grow and be successful, no matter how hard it's going to be. It does not to say it's going to be easy, as you said.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, I
Uh,
think.
yeah. I think it is pretty amazing. Not just like, not just like, I think it's pretty amazing in general that you can take something so simple as running, right? And have this like what you might think is a silly goal to cross a finish line and it
Mm.
to really catapult, right?
Yes.
Into a life change. Like for me, it's life changing in career,
Yes.
me as a person, me finding my voice and now using it to amplify other voices.
Yes.
There's just so many. To me, that's the crazy part. Is like it's just running. It's
Beautiful.
like it's
I
this little
know.
thing. You know what I mean? But a lot of people find their their thing. Mine happens to be ours, or it happens to be running.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times people are looking for that thing. And honestly, I feel like movement is a big underdog here, in the
Mm.
sense of people don't really look to answers in terms of they sit there and try to figure out something. I
Mm.
think as once we like move our bodies,
Yes.
I think there's like science out there. I'm sure there is
Absolutely.
for you to move your body, and it helps you really expand like what you're thinking or what you're working on. They tell you step away, go outside, get some fresh air. I mean, running is the epitome of that, right? We're outdoors
Absolutely.
running. I mean, I like to say the pavement is my open office space.
That's
You know?
right.
So
Yes.
I brainstorm out there. I think of ideas. I challenge myself. I come
Mhm.
up with solutions, all just by running. So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Absolutely. Could not agree anymore. Beautiful stuff. I wish you, like, just all the best and most success in this endeavor. I think it is a much needed piece of the puzzle in this running and fitness space. Yeah. So I have one last question for you, and it's always the kicker.
Uh-oh, here we go.
So um, if there's advice that you have ever been given, or if there's advice that you would like to give, what would it be?
Hmm. I would say it's that life is happening for you and not to you.
Mm,
I think that's really important because we all go through our own trials and tribulations. We all have a story. We all have something that we've conquered or that we're working on trying to conquer. And so it can feel real easy to things are happening, to you. But I strongly believe those things happen for a reason and they really mold and cultivate and create you to exactly who you need to be for an
mhm.
exact purpose. And so those things are happening, for you. And they are a blessing in disguise. So don't be discouraged about things that are happening, what you might think are happening to you. Like life is working in its perfect way um, for you.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It has been a pleasure, an honor, and a delight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you, Pilar. Thank you for having me. And it was definitely, I feel like I can talk to you for hours. So thank you for having me. I can't wait to see it.
Excellent, excellent. I will.